Hey everybody, welcome to the Kaldheim draft set review. We're going to go through over the course of the next 6 videos, or for those of you on Twitch, the next 6 hours or so, rating every single card in Kaldheim from a draft perspective. Of course, there's some caveats. I've not played this set, so this is how I'm going to start approaching these cards. My ratings may change coming up. They are, of course, my opinions. There are cards that I will dislike because I just don't play that style of card. You might rate them a little bit more highly. There's usually a third disclaimer that I give, but I don't remember what it is right now. You'll notice a big change if you did not watch the me and Semulin set review last time around for Zendikar. There's no letter grades. Don't look at the bottom one, that'll spoil the joke. Instead of doing letter grades, I'm going to do where in the pack I would be happy picking this card. Longtime viewers know that I have not been happy with grades for a long time. And I think this solves the problem. The trick is that grades don't matter. If a card is an A+ or an A or an A- or a B+, that doesn't matter, and people get really hung up on whether it's a B+ or an A-. All of those cards are first picks. You're going to first pick them in 99.999% of the packs that they're in, and the vast majority of the time, especially if you're playing on Arena where there's no foil rares, you're never going to have to compare a bomb rare with another bomb rare. You never are. You're always going to pick it. It's going to be the only rare in the pack, and you're always going to play it. So what does it matter if it's an A or a B+? Whereas these pick grades, I think, do a lot better. So first pick is a card that I would be happy first picking in a pack. Second, third is a card that I would be happy picking second or third. Very good but not crazy rares are probably going to end up there. A lot of removal is going to end up there. Fourth, fifth pick, we're getting a little bit lower. We're getting more into the, very good cards but not nutty. Sixth, eighth, we're getting into the cards that I'm looking to get. And will certainly go into my deck, but, I don't want to waste a high pick on them. On the wheel are cards that I don't really respect. I'll probably play them, or may not, but I'm not wasting one of my first 8 picks on one of these cards. And an F, because I like my F grade, and I'm not giving up my F grade yet, is a card I'm not playing. Don't pick it. Rip it up. Drop the draft. Refuse to draft this card, because it's so shockingly bad. Gary, thank you very much for the 22-month resub. Let's start the set review with the gold cards. And we're going to start out with Agar, the Freezing Flame. Agar is 1 blue-red for a legendary creature, giant wizarded uncommon. It's a 3/3. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess damage, if a giant wizard or spell you control dealt damage to it this turn, draw a card. This is an interesting card. It's a 3/3 for 3, which is pretty decent. And this, of course, is the signpost on common. Blue-red is going to be giant wizard spells / excess damage, which is an interesting new term. I don't think that's ever been said in Magic. And I think this is a pretty dang good card. It's a 3/3 for 3, which you're always going to be relatively happy with, and it does what your color combo is going to want to do. You're going to be dealing excess damage through big burn spells, or perhaps through big damage, etc. And getting to potentially draw a card when you do that is just going to be really nice. I don't think you're first picking this over premium removal or, bombs, but I think it is a second, third sort of pick. It waffles between second, third, or fourth, fifth, I would say. But this is exactly what blue-red wants to be doing. There's a cool little, I guess, very narrow thing where you could potentially deal excess damage from a angel warrior, but then ping that creature, and then even though the angel warrior is dealing the excess damage, because it was dealt damage by a spell, you would still draw a card. It's kind of cool. But yeah, it's super interesting, and excess damage is a new thing. So second, third pick for Agar. Nil, thank you very much for that 2-month resub. Up next is our first saga. Sagas are back. Arnie slays the troll. Arnie, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, is red-green for a enchantment saga at uncommon. Target creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control for step 1. Step 2, add red. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature you control. Step 3, you gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. It's fine. It is a fight spell that does not pump until the next turn. and I don't like playing sorcery speed fight spells that don't pump. They're fine, but, you know, Prey Upon is not a second, third pick. Prey Upon's more like a sixth, eighth pick, maybe even on the wheel. Getting that extra red mana is pretty cool, and then 2+1/+1 counters on something, and it doesn't have to be what fought, is pretty cool, and gaining life equal to the biggest creature you have is pretty cool. All of these put together still make it a totally fine card. I think people are going to overrate it a little bit, though. I think it is a little bit more in the 4th, 5th range, just because it's a 2-color sorcery speed fight spell that does not pump when the fight happens, and that pushes me off a little bit. I do wish the second and first part were switched up. That would make this card absolutely 100% a second, third pick. Because they're not switched, I think this is a 4th, 5th pick. It's still fine. You'll still play it. Just don't overrate this. Don't treat this as like super amazing removal, because it's not. Up next is Ascent of the Worthy. Ascent of the Worthy is 1 white-black for an Enchantment Saga add-on common. Step 1 and Step 2, choose a creature you control. Until your next turn, all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control is dealt to that creature instead. This is an interesting mechanic that we've seen sometimes. It's usually printed on a creature. There's a specific angel that always has this, and I can't remember the name of the angel. It's sort of cool, but it's weird. I would prefer to have that effect as an instant speed effect, because then you can do the surprise block, right? Or you could do the surprise attack. Here, your opponent absolutely knows what's going to happen, and they know what creature it's going to happen to. But it may just stop them from doing some sort of big attack. It may allow you to do a big attack of your own. So even though it's all on board and your opponent knows everything that's going to happen here, it can still set up some pretty good scenarios. Step 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a flying counter on it. It's an angel warrior in addition to other types. Getting back a creature from the battlefield or from the graveyard to the battlefield for 3 mana and a few turns, and it flies now, is really, really, really nice. So I think this card's quite good. I love me some reanimation, especially when it's cheap. So I think I'm putting this around the 2nd, 3rd pick level. There's a chance it might be 4th, 5th, but I think I'm going to start at 2nd, 3rd. I really like straight up reanimation effects, and the only way you're really getting blown out by this is enchantment removal at some point. So I'm going to put the 2nd, 3rd pick. I think it's pretty good. I think this is much better than what Black-White looks like it's attempting to do in its archetype, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Up next is Battle for Brettagar. Battle for Brettagar is 1 green-white for a rare enchantment saga. Step 1, create a 1/1 white human warrior creature token. Step 2, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Step 3, choose any number of artifact tokens and or creature tokens you control with different names. For each of them, create a token that's a copy of it. So it's 3 mana. I mean, it's 3 mana worst case scenario, do nothing, because that's a nightmare scenario of they somehow kill your 2 1/1s and you don't copy anything. Realistically, this is 3 mana to get 2 human warriors and 2 green elf warriors at a minimum, we'll call it. It's hard to say exactly what the minimum is. It is kind of like a bad version of History of Benalia. That said, it's still fine. I'm still happy to play this card. I'm probably a little bit sad to see it in the rare slot, but if you can get some token stuff going and get some other tokens going, then this could be pretty good. You could get a human warrior and an elf warrior and maybe get another kind of token and perhaps another kind of token. And green-white does have a variety of tokens that can be made. They are generally going to be human warriors or elf warriors, but there are a few other ones there. I think this is in the 2nd, 3rd pick realm because I'm probably taking whatever removal is in the pack over this unless it's really bad. If there's no removal, yeah, sure, I'll grab this, but I'll put it as 2nd, 3rd pick. It's not amazing. There's a chance it's more towards 4th, 5th, but it's a build around, I guess, but maybe 4th, 5th is even a bit high. Maybe 4th, 5th is even a bit high. Because the floor is turn 5, or our average floor is turn 5, you have 4 1/1s. So you're going to want to have anthems and stuff. Maybe this is more like 6th to 8th pick. Maybe this is a little bit more like Call the Cavalry or something, but a very slow one. Let's go 6/8. Let's go 6/8. I'll agree with chat here. 6/8 for Battle for Brettagar. Unfortunate rare. Up next is Battle of Frost and Fire. Battle of Frost and Fire is 3 blue-red for a rare enchantment saga. Step 1, Battle of Frost and Fire deals 4 damage to each non-giant creature and each planeswalker. Step 2, Scry 3. Step 3, whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost 5 or greater this turn, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Another rare saga that I don't want to be rare. Blue-red is the giant wizard spell deck, so hopefully you're going to have some giants, so they'll live through the Frost and Fire dealing 4 damage to everything, which will be, handy, although that's not an effect that I like to rely on, just because there's going to be games where your opponent has giants. There's going to be games where none of your giants came out, and so I'm always a little bit off on this. Scry 3 is cool, but I don't want to pay 5 mana for it. I don't want it to be my rare in my pack. And then step 3, this is limited. I might cast a 5-drop specifically when step 3 triggers, and it's got to be the second 5-drop in my deck because I already have this 5-drop in my deck. I think this is relatively weak. I think this is around a 6th to 8th pick. I'm just not a big fan of this card. I think in pack 3, when I'm blue-red giants and I have a number of giants, I'm pretty happy to have the first 2 steps here. But I think this is like a pack 3 second or third pick, and I think the grade for us will be 6th to 8th, and that is definitely a little bit of me just not liking damage wraths like this, but I'm gonna go 6/8. Up next is the Bears of Litiara. The Bears of Litiara are 1 green-blue for a rare enchantment saga. Step 1, create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. Changeling, for those who are unaware, means that it is every creature type that has ever existed. Step 2, any number of target shapeshifter creatures you control have base power and toughness 4/4. So that 2/2 becomes a 4/4, as does any other shapeshifter that you have. Step 3, choose up to 1 target creature or planeswalker, each creature with power 4 or greater. Hey, you probably have at least one. You control deals damage equal to its power to that permanent. I think this card's great. This is a 3 mana 4/4 in a turn, as long as your 2/2 doesn't get killed, plus any other shapeshifters you happen to have, of which there are at least a few, is pretty nice. There are some memory issues. There's a lot of memory issues with this set, by the way. It's definitely the era of online Magic. And then step 3, we get to, at least deal 4 damage to a creature, maybe even deal 8 or 12 or 16 or more, utterly demolish a creature. I think this card's great. I think it's a first pick in the packs that it's in. I'm picking this over premium removal, I think. If this was like a pro tour, I would probably take mono-colored premium removal over it, but I'm going to give this a first pick realistically. I think it's just a very, very, very solid card. Up next is Binding of the Old Gods. Binding of the Old Gods is 2 black-green for an uncommon enchantment saga. Step 1, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Just removal. Step 2, search your library for a forest card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle your library. Whatever. It's turn 5. I don't care about getting a land on turn 5. Step 3, creatures you control gain death touch until end of turn. End of my turn, I don't want death touch on attacks. It's entertaining. There's some fun stuff. Yes, you could technically kill somebody with infect. But this is 4 mana removal. Like, it doesn't, the step 2 and step 3 could be blank, and this card's a first pick. If you do get some extra stuff out of step 2 and step 3, if that land on turn 5 or later happens to be the thing that matters, sure, cool. And if your death touch on offense happen, cool. But it's just straight up removal. Easy first pick. I almost said A+. But it wouldn't have been an A+. But it doesn't matter because we're not doing grades. Up next is the Sky Massacre. Sky Massacre is 1 black-red for a rare enchantment saga. Step 1, create a 2/3 red demon berserker creature token with menace. Step 2, whenever a berserker attacks this turn, you draw a card and lose a life. Step 3, add red for each berserker you control. Until end of turn, you don't lose mana as steps and phases end. So this is a 3 mana 2/3 that, when it attacks 1 time, draws you a card and loses a life. Perhaps you may have some other berserkers, black-red, has a number of berserkers that exist. And then step 3, you get some mana, I guess, sure. It's a nice bonus. But this is just like a solid 2/3, I think. I think this is around like second, third feels slightly high. I think this is a little bit more like 4th, 5th, but again, like I'm picking this relatively highly. I'm putting it in every single black-red deck that I'm playing. I'm probably not splashing for it, but this is just potentially a bunch of value. Like turn 4, you could have 2, maybe even 3 berserkers out. And if you could draw up to 3 cards, losing 3 life, whatever, that'd be really, really, really good. So I think this card's totally solid. I'm taking what over this? There's not going to be a bomb rare in the pack. I'm taking premium removal over it, so I guess it is just a second, third pick, actually. Second, third pick for Blood Sky Massacre. Up next is Fall of the Imposter. Fall of the Imposter is 1 green-white for an Enchantment Saga at uncommon. Step 1 and Step 2, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. Step 3, exile a creature with the greatest power among creatures target opponent controls. So 3 mana, get a couple of counters on a creature over 2 turns, and then kill probably the most threatening thing your opponent controls. However, your opponent has 2 turns of warning that this is going to happen. So what's your opponent going to do? They're not going to play that big scary 6/6 for a couple of turns. That's a bonus, but they're just not going to play it. The thing that I always say during these set reviews, respect that your opponent is not an idiot and just plays their 6/6 mythic flying demon while you have this on the table. Still, it's a fine card. I just don't think it's second, third pick. I think it's probably 4th, 5th. I think it's still good enough. Getting a couple of counters is cool. Of course, there's the problem of you don't want to play this on an empty board, which means it's not really a 3-drop per se. I think there is a fair bit wrong with it. But let's go 4th, 5th for now. There's a chance it goes a little bit lower. Yeah, just be careful with these. It reminds me of Triumph of Gerard, where it reads amazingly, and you're going to play a match where it's going to massively overperform, and then you're going to play matches where it's one of the worst cards you ever played. Up next is Firia. Firia, Judge of Valor. Firia is 2 white, black, black for a legendary angel cleric at uncommon. It's a 2/4 flying lifelinker. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Black-white's archetype is playing 2 spells in a turn, which concerns me because that's not how limited magic works. You're going to do that a couple times before your hand is just empty, unless you have a whole bunch of card draw in black-white. It's also overcosted. It's a 2/4 flying lifelinker, which actually I think we've had. I think we had Serif of Dawn. No, maybe that was 2 white-white, not 3 white-white. But it's pretty hard to cast. It's very expensive. A 2/4 flying lifelink is fine. Don't get me wrong there. It's still fine. I think you always play this if you're in black-white. But I don't want to go into this archetype in black-white. And we'll talk about this a lot over the set review. I'm really worried that this archetype is one of those archetypes where they're like, haha, you do this in this color. We didn't test it to see if it could actually work or not. So, yeah, I'll put this like 6th to 8th pick when you know you're in black-white. The upside, of course, is you could be in black something and splash a single white for this. Well, not a single white. You would do 3 white sources if you're splashing like an adult. I just don't know that it's worth splashing. But yeah, 6th to 8th, then yeah, I'm worried about the black-white archetype. I'm not worried about this card, though. Firia's Retribution. Firia's Retribution is 1 white, white, black for a rare enchantment saga. Step 1, create a Serra Angel. Create a 4/4 Angel Warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. I remember when Serra Angels cost 5 mana. And this is not the last 4 mana Serra Angel that we'll see. Step 2, until end of turn, angels you control gain tap, destroy target creature with power less than this creature's power. So, defeat? Was defeat power 3 or less? Vanquish the weak, we'll say. So every angel can tap to vanquish the weak. And if you have a bigger angel, kill something bigger. Step 3, angels you control gain double strike. So now you have an 8 damage Vigilant Flyer, at least. This card's nuts. It's a first pick. It's insane. It's unreasonable. I don't know why Serra Angels are now 4 mana. Or less, as we'll see when we get to white. Easy first pick. Up next is Forging the Tyrite Sword. Forging the Tyrite Sword is 1 red-white for an uncommon enchantment saga. Step 1, make a treasure. Step 2, make a treasure. If you're very new to Magic, treasures are artifact tokens that you can tap to make a mana of any color. Step 3, search your library for a card named Helvar, God of Battle, or an equipment card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. F. This card's awful. I am not paying 3 mana in a red-white deck for something that is not a creature, that for 2 turns makes me a treasure, and then step 3 fetches me a mythic rare. I think Helvar is a rare, which I probably don't have, or an equipment, which we haven't looked at equipment yet. This apparently is the equipment set. I don't think most of the equipment is worth playing. I think a lot of it's pretty bad. This is an F. I'm never playing it. Up next is Herald, King of Skemfar. Herald, King of Skemfar is 1 black-green for a legendary creature elf warrior at uncommon. It's a 3/2. So this is the signpost legendary uncommon. There's something interesting here where some of them are real easy to cast. 1 black-green. And some of them are 2 white-black-black. And I think it unbalances the archetypes a little bit. Herald is a 3/2 legendary creature elf warrior uncommon. They've got Menace. When Herald, King of Skemfar, enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an elf warrior or Tyvar. Tyvar is a planeswalker from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. 3/2 Menace for 3 is totally fine. It has a very relevant archetype, or a very relevant type of elf for the black-green decks, and it will go and find you an elf or a warrior, of which you're going to have them. I think this card's quite good. I think it's a very strong 4th, 5th. I don't think it makes it into the 2nd, 3rd. Maybe it just makes it into 2nd, 3rd, actually. I think Herald's very good. 3/2 for 3 Menace that is probably going to draw you a card. No, I guess that's not 2nd or 3rd. Let's go 4th, 5th for Herald, King of Skemfar. Very, very good. And like I said, I think these casting costs are little hints that some of the archetypes are maybe a little bit less playable. Up next is Herald Unites the Elves. Herald Unites the Elves is a 2 black-green enchantment saga at rare. Step 1, mill 3 cards. You may put an elf or Tyvar card from your graveyard onto the battlefield. Step 2, put a +1/+1 counter on every elf you control. Step 3, whenever an elf you control attacks this turn, target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. I think this card's pretty good if you are very elves, which you're hopefully going to be in black-green. Because this is mill 3, probably put a creature on the battlefield, which means this is a 4 mana... Put a random creature, perhaps you play this a little bit later and you know what's probably going to come back, which could be better. The question is, are you going to get anything better than 4 mana? You know, are you going to reanimate a 5 mana elf or a 6 mana elf? I don't actually know if there are 5 or 6 mana elves. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. But then all of your elves get a counter on them, which if you're going a little bit wide with elves could be good, perhaps with elf tokens. Perhaps you could splash this in your green-white token deck. And then you get to deal -1/-1 to 1 creature based on the number of elves that you attack with, which is kind of cool because you can perhaps get rid of maybe their big blocker. I think this is a good card, but I think it has to go in a very specific deck, an elf deck. And so I think this is a little bit more like 4th, 5th pick when you've already started to head towards this world. And of course it goes way up 2nd or 3rd pack when you're already, in that deck. Up next is Emmerstrum Predator. Emmerstrum Predator is 2 black-red for a creature vampire dragon at rare. It's a 3/3 flyer. Whenever Emmerstrum Predator becomes tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on Emmerstrum Predator. Sacrifice another creature. Emmerstrum Predator gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. 3 mana flying dragon. Totally solid. Whenever it becomes tapped, you get to put a counter on it as long as you have a creature card to exile from a graveyard. This card just gets better. Your graveyard, their graveyard, doesn't matter. Obviously, you're probably going to start with their graveyard. This card's just amazing. It's a first pick in every pack it's in. You're playing it every time. And the fact that if this is your win condition, if this has gotten really big, and you just sack a creature to make this indestructible to anything other than, I guess, exile removal or -X, -X, this card is great. It doesn't even need a card to exile. Oh, wow. Yeah, there's no if you do. You don't even need to exile. Oh, this card's great. Yeah, this card's awesome. Easy, easy, easy first pick. You're putting it in every pack. Let's take a brief break to get that Stream Raiders battle going. Remember, we are doing Stream Raiders today. If you want to get involved, you can follow the link in chat to pop a unit down. All you have to do is pop a unit down every 5 minutes or so. You don't have to do it every 5 minutes, but it makes us do better if you do every 5 minutes. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to win this battle, as I don't think many people placed units, but we all do get another chance at this. This will be a quick break that we're taking every half hour or so, and I guess it's a chance for me to interact with chat very briefly while we do this battle. But yeah, there's no if you do exile a card, put a counter on that. Dang, that's really good. That's really good. Also important to note, that is the first dragon we've seen. There's going to be some cards that care about dragons. And we're only going to see one more dragon. So we'll have to talk about that. Initial opinions on art for the set. The art is pretty dang good, except for a couple of cards. Yeah, it's kind of like Hallowed Blade on steroids. Having to sack a creature versus discard a card is pretty different, but isn't too big of a deal. We actually pulled this battle off. Well done, everybody. Let's open that chest. Hazmat Medic with most kills, Thangarth with most assists, 8 gold to everybody, 200 gold to Thangarth, and 1 Flying Rogue to Hazmat Medic. Let's pop on to another battle here. So you can pop a unit down every 5 minutes to help us out here. Perhaps you could even pop down a Mana Leak Flag Bearer, which you can buy from the store and help the channel out. So check that out every 5 minutes. And let's get back to the review. So up next, we have Invasion of Giants. Invasion of the Giants is blue-red for an enchantment saga at uncommon. Step 1, scry 2. Step 2, draw a card. Then you may reveal a giant card from your hand. When you do, Invasion of the Giants deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Why is it when you do and not if you do? That seems very presumptuous. Step 3, the next giant spell you cast this turn costs 2 less to cast. 2 mana, scry 2. Reveal a giant, which means you're really going to hope you have, you're really going to want to have that giant in your hand when you cast this on step 1. Otherwise, step 2, I guess step 2 still draws you a card. I think this card's fine. I don't think I want to wheel it. I think it's 6th through 8th. Like if I'm blue-red, I'm going to have giants. I'm going to want to scry. I'm going to want to draw a card. It will suck if step 2 is draw a card, not do damage, and you don't have a giant to discount. But I think it's still 6th through 8th. I think I'm still very happy with this in every blue-red deck. I'm just not wasting a very high pick on it. And I don't think it'll wheel that much. Up next is Cardur Doomscourge. Cardur Doomscourge is 2 black-red. 2 black-red. I said that right. Legendary creature, Demon Berserker. At uncommon, it's a 4/3. When Cardur, it feels like I'm saying Cardur. When Cardur Doomscourge, Jesus, enters the battlefield, until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able and attack a player other than you if able. Obviously doesn't matter in limited. Whenever an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's a 4/3 for 4, which is fine. For 1 turn, your opponents have to attack you. If that's bad, they're probably already attacking you anyways, so there's no real downside there. And perhaps it's even good in that you're going to get some very profitable blocks, perhaps. And then whenever an attacking creature dies, your opponent loses a life and you gain a life is pretty nifty, especially because that's always in play, even on future turns, and would count on your attacks. When your attacking creatures die, it's going to drain some stuff. This is a pretty typical black-red, like, draining when things die card. I think it's very good. I think it's upwards of 2nd, 3rd pick. This is going to pull me into black-red. I like it. I like it quite a bit. It's not a first pick, but I don't think it's much lower. Second, third. Up next is Cardur's Vicious Return. Cardur's Vicious Return is 2 black-red for an uncommon enchantment saga. Step 1, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, Cardur's Vicious Return deals 3 damage to any target. Step 2, each player discards a card. Step 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. It gains haste until your next turn. I think this is really good. I think this is quite good. 4 mana, sack a creature. So you have to have a creature on the board. That's not a tall ask, but it's a little bit of an ask. To bolt anything, opponent's face or a creature. Cool. Very cool. But you had to sacrifice a creature. Each player discards a card, so you and your opponent have to discard a card. That's kind of unfortunate. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Perhaps the one that you sacrificed. Perhaps the one that you discarded. Perhaps the 6-drop that you discarded and you're not at 6 mana yet. And it gets a +1/+1 counter. There's a slight possibility of this just failing. You don't have a board when you play this. Perhaps you top decked it and you don't really have a hand. There are some downsides where this doesn't do well. Most cards would not do super well in those situations, however, so this isn't going to get knocked down too much. I think this is a second, third pick. I think I go into black-red for this. I think I'm very happy to have this card. The Eldest Rebad. Kind of, yeah. Kind of. It's worse than Eldest Reborn for sure, but I think it's still very good. I'm going to go second, third. Second, third for Cardur's Vicious Return. Up next is Kaya the Inexorable. Kaya the Inexorable is 3 white-black for a legendary Planeswalker Kaya at Mythic. She starts with 5 loyalty. +1, put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature. It gains when this creature dies or is put into exile, return it to its owner's hand, and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. -3, exile target non-land permanent. So you get to do that at least once, and it's not too much work to do that twice over 3 turns. -7, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among creatures you own in exile, or cards you own in exile, without paying its mana cost. That's really good because you can bring Kaya back as long as you've gotten this emblem. Kaya's fantastic. She's a first pick every time. She's a great example of why I love that we're not doing grades, because I don't know if she's an A+. I think she might just be a strong A, but it doesn't matter because she's a first pick. First pick, easy, easy, easy Kaya. You're going to jump into black-white for this. You'll probably even splash it. Very good card. Up next is King Narfy's Betrayal. King Narfy's Betrayal is 1 blue-black for an enchantment saga at rare. Step 1, each player mills 4 cards, then you may exile a creature card or planeswalker card from each graveyard. Step 2 and Step 3, until end of turn you may cast spells from among cards exiled with King Narfy's Betrayal, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So, you and your opponent both mill 4 cards. That's 8 cards for you to pick a creature from. You're not going to pick a planeswalker. It's not going to happen that often. And then you've got 2 turns after that to cast those 2 cards that you essentially drew. So this is 3 mana, draw 2. I think this card's really good. I think it's a first pick. I really like what black-blue is doing in this archetype, or in this format, as much as I think that like the black-white archetype is trash in this format, and the red-white. I think this one is very good. So I'm very excited to play this. I'm first picking it every time. I'm jumping into blue-black. There's a chance that it's second, third, because maybe in a Pro Tour draft back when those existed. Oh, sorry, it doesn't draw 2. It doesn't draw 2. It only exiles 1. Then you may exile a creature. No, from each graveyard. MTGO Mike, it's from each graveyard, so it does exile 2, so you draw 2. Yeah, like in a Pro Tour draft, maybe this is not a first pick, but there's no such thing as a Pro Tour draft anymore. So, first pick for King Narfy's Betrayal. Up next is Cole, the Forge Master. Cole is red-white for a legendary creature dwarf warrior at uncommon. It's a 2/2. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, return it to its owner's hand. Creature tokens you control that are enchanted or equipped get +1/+1. By the way, you won't cast it on turn 3? I don't see why not. We can talk about that later, but I don't see why you wouldn't. So whenever another non-token creature you control dies, if it was enchanted or equipped, we haven't seen any enchantment or equipment yet. I don't like the vast majority of it. I think, as usual, most of it's very bad. Creature tokens you control that are enchanted or equipped get +1/+1, so it has to explicitly be tokens. It can't even be your creatures. I think this card's just not good. I think Boros Equipment is just not good. Is Boros Equipment ever good? Not really. It wasn't very good in Dominaria when that was the archetype there, and I don't think it's very good here either. I'm looking to wheel this card, and I think, and we can talk about this more when we look at red and white, I think I'm just not looking to play this archetype. Up next is Coma, Cosmos Serpent. Coma is 3 green, blue for a legendary creature serpent at Mythic. It's a 6/6. It can't be countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Coma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent. Choose one. Tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn, so kind of detain it. Or Coma Cosmos Serpents gains indestructible until end of turn. This is a 6/6 for 7, which is a little bit overcosted. Can't be countered, but that doesn't tend to matter that much in limited. But it makes a 3/3 every single turn. And if your opponent doesn't kill it in the first turn, those 3/3s are going to make this thing indestructible. This card's amazing. It's a first pick every pack. It's great. It's fantastic. Maybe pick up like a little bit of ramp to make sure you can hit this reliably. Not every turn up. Each upkeep, your opponent's turn too. Wow. All right. Yeah. This card's very, very good. It's like Verdant Force. Again, pick up a little bit of ramp just to ensure you're going to get there. But this is a snap first pick. It's amazing. It's going to absolutely destroy some games. Up next is Maya, Brettagar Protector, Semulin's preview card. Maya is 2 green, white for a legendary creature, human warrior at uncommon. It's 2/3. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 white human warrior creature token. So again, here we go. We have another legendary that we saw what? We saw 1 black, green, 2 black, red, 2 green, 2 green, white. We're getting harder to cast this spell. This one, though, is much better than the white-black one. 2/3 with an anthem attached to it is probably just totally fine. And then it's got landfall, make a 1/1. So you're going to get those 1/1s, which are actually going to be 2/2s. I wouldn't count on, getting too many of them. She's coming down on turn 5, and you've already played a land that turn. So you're only realistically getting, upwards of 3-ish of these creatures, maybe 4, but I mean, that's still an awesome bit of value. The trick here is that casting cost, I don't know when I want to get in on this. Obviously, if I'm green-white, I absolutely, desperately want this card in my deck. Where do I pick it? Do I get into green-white for it? I don't know. I think it's somewhere around 4th, 5th. I don't think it's 2nd, 3rd. That casting cost just freaks me out a little bit. The nice thing here is that there are probably some white decks, like white-red or white-black or white-blue, that would splash green for this. Getting flooded is not as bad as she's down. That's true. I think she's around 4th, 5th. I think she's like a strong 4th, 5th. It's just that casting cost. And being just a 2/3 frightens me just a touch. But 4th, 5th pick, I think it's still great. Again, you're putting this in every green-white deck and being very happy with it. Up next is Morite of the Frost. Morite of the Frost is 2 green, blue. So again, we've gone back to the hard casting costs. Legendary snow creature shapeshifter at uncommon. It's a 0/0 changeling. You may have Morite of the Frost enter the battlefield as a copy of a permanent you control, except it's legendary and snow in addition to its other types. And it's a creature. If it's a creature, it enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it and has changeling. I don't like clones that copy my stuff. Because to copy something that I have that's really good means I already have to be in a state where I'm probably ahead, which makes clones that copy only things you control a little bit win more. This one's 5 mana. It does put 2 counters on the thing, which does make it a better version of what you had, so I think it's still decent. You could copy a land, that's true. There's the downside of it makes the creature legendary, which means that you can't copy a legendary creature. You can, but you'll have to sack one of them. So I'm not sold on this. I'm not sold on it. I think it's fine. I think you're playing this in every green-blue deck, just like Glasspool Mimic. But I think I would really strongly prefer to not first pick it. I'm not second, third picking it. I think I'm fourth. I think I'm 6th to 8th picking it when I know I'm in green-blue. And I think people will generally probably 4th, 5th pick it instead. I just really don't like cloning my own stuff only because it does require you to already be kind of ahead. Technically, you could ramp yourself by copying a land. Of course, you would have paid 5 mana, which means that that ramp comes into play on turn 7. But yeah, I'm gonna go 6th, 8th pick for me. I think realistically it's a 4th, 5th. Up next is Narfy Betrayer King. Narfy Betrayer King is 3 blue-black for a legendary snow creature zombie wizard at uncommon. It's a 4/3. Other snow and zombie creatures you control get +1/+1. Snow, snow, snow. Remember, of course, snow can be paid with 1 mana from a snow source. So we'll see snow sources a little bit later. Snow, snow, snow. Return Narfy Betrayer King from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. 4/3 for 5 is obviously not great, but it anthems probably your team. Blue-black is definitely snow zombies. You're going to have snow creatures. You're going to have zombies. You're going to have snow zombies. And then being able to pay snow, 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 which you're hopefully going to have. If you're blue-black, you want a lot of snow sources. You get to just bring it back tapped, which means it's really hard to deal with. I think it's a very good card. I think this is a very strong second, third pick. Like I'm taking premium removal over this. I'm taking a bomb rare over this. But I think it's a strong second, third pick for Narfy. I'm really excited to play the blue-black deck. Up next is Nico Aeris. Nico Aeris is X white blue blue for legendary planeswalker Nico at Mythic. They start with 3 loyalty. When Nico Aeris enters the battlefield, create X shard tokens. So that's whatever you paid X for. +1 up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Whenever that creature deals damage this turn, return it to its owner's hand. -1, Nico Aeris deals 2 damage to target tapped creature for each card you've drawn this turn, which is probably 1, but maybe more. -1, create a shard token. So what does shard tokens do? Shards are enchantments with pay 2 and sacrifice it. Scry 1, then draw a card. So it's like a clue that scries. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to make of this one. 3 loyalty is pretty low if you're paying 4 or 5 or 6 mana into this, but you're sort of banking that mana kind of for future scries and draws, which is nice. Up to 1 target creature you control can't be blocked this turn is nice enough, but when it deals damage, it returns it to its owner's hand. Like maybe you're abusing some ETB effects, but that's a little bit tough. -1 to deal 2 damage. I guess you're always dealing 2 damage because you drew at least 1 card. Perhaps dealing 4 is probably what saves this, I think. And then -1 to make a shard token, I guess if you're already really far ahead. It's an interesting card. It's one of those planeswalkers I like that this doesn't demolish the game. It probably a little bit warps the game, but it doesn't demolish the game. It reminds me of kind of Nahiri, sort of, although I think Nico is way better than Nahiri is. So I don't know. It's not a first pick. I don't think it's a second, third. I'm going to put this around 4th, 5th. I definitely want to play with the card to really find out. The removal does only hit tapped creatures, which is tough. I'm going to start it at 4th, 5th. I think it's better than Nahiri, and I think it's worse than a lot of planeswalkers we've seen in the past, and we've already seen today. 4th, 5th pick for Nico. I'll first pick it the first time I see it for sure, because I really want to give it a try. Up next is Nico Defies Destiny. Nico Defies Destiny is one white blue for a uncommon enchantment saga. Step 1, you gain 2 life for each Foretold card you own in exile. I don't know how many you're going to have in exile at once. We can talk about that. Step 2, add white blue. Spend this mana only to foretell cards, only to foretell cards or cast spells that have foretell. Step 3, return target card with foretell from your graveyard to your hand. So we haven't seen a foretell card yet. Foretell cards, you can pay 2 generic mana to put it face down, and then on a later turn, you can cast it for its foretell cost, which is usually cheaper than its casting cost. Typically, you're paying about the same mana. Maybe you're paying a 1 mana discount. So gain 2 for each Foretold card you own in exile. So if you're playing this on turn 3, you might gain 2 life, and that's it. But if you're playing it later, maybe you're gaining 2 life. I just don't know how often you are holding a bunch of foretell cards. Because if you're spending up, and I think this is going to catch people a lot at the start of the format. If you're going turn 2, I foretell a card. Turn 3, I foretell a card. Turn 4, I play a creature and foretell a card. And your opponent just goes, cool, I play a creature turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, you're dead. Because you're spending all of this time doing nothing to the battlefield. So I don't think you're going to have that many Foretold cards in exile at any given time. I think you might have 1. I think 2 is perhaps somewhat common. I can't imagine having 3 cards Foretold. Can't imagine it. Step 2, add white blue. So you get a little bit of a discount. You get a free foretell, or maybe you discount casting that Foretold card. That's a cool little bonus. And then returning a foretell card from your graveyard to your hand, that's a cool little bonus as well. So this card here is not a 3-drop. It's more like a 6 or 7-drop just because you're not casting it early, although you don't have to spend all that mana for it. I think it's fine, but I think it's a total role player. I'm going to look to wheel this card, and when I'm in blue-white foretell, then I think I'll pick this up. But foretell is interesting. I like the mechanic. We'll talk about it more when we see it. But I think people are going to go way too ham on it and end up getting run over because it doesn't do anything until you actually start casting the cards. Up next is the Raven's Warning. The Raven's Warning is 1 white blue for an enchantment saga at rare. Step 1, create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. You gain 2 life. Step 2, whenever one or more creatures you control with flying deal combat damage to a player this turn, look at that player's hand, whatever, and draw a card. Step 3, you may put a card you own from outside the game on top of your library. I don't think this one's very good. I don't think this one's very good at all. It's 3 mana to make a 1/1 and gain 2 life. And then presumably that 1/1 can get through. And so you get to look at your opponent's hand, which people massively overvalue. That's not actually that good of an upside. You generally have an idea of what's in their hand. But you get to draw a card. That's cool. You get a 1-turn Ophidian. And then you can put a card you own from outside the game on top of your library. Why isn't it in your deck? Why isn't it in your deck? So there's the reason that it's not in your deck is because it's your 24th card. And so this draws you a card, but it draws you your 24th worst card in your deck. Or it doesn't even draw because it puts it on top. So it's going to be another turn. Or it gets you a sideboard card that you desperately need. Oh, well. Like, oh, well. That's going to matter what? In exactly game 1? Or I guess game 2 when something else comes out. I think this card's bad. I think you actually... I think you wheel it. I'm fighting between wheel and F here. I think you wheel it because a 1/1 flying, gain 2 life, presumably draw a card, is maybe worth putting into your deck as a 23rd card. But yeah, let's go with wheel, and I think it might actually just be an F. I think the card's bad. Up next is Serif Realm Eater. Serif Realm Eater is 1 black-red for a legendary creature, wolf at rare. It's a 3/3. Whenever a permanent opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Serif Realm Eater. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Serif has 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you may remove all of them. If you do, exile each other non-land permanent with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of counters this way. Going back to the previous card, how different is it from the Berserker one? The Berserker one's good, and that one's bad. Would I play 1 blue-white for a 1/1 flyer that gains 2 life and draws a card? Probably not, no. Probably not, no. Well, no, because I would play 3 for a 1/1 that draws a card. It's called Sky Scanner. Except all of those times where your opponent has a flyer and your 1/1 can't get through. So I think it is worse than Sky Scanner. So we'll keep it at wheel. I won't go F. We'll keep it at wheel. So yeah, Serif is a 3/3 for 3, which is totally fine. You'll play that. And then whenever a permanent an opponent controls is put into a graveyard, which generally is going to be a creature dying, but could be a treasure being sacrificed, could be anything being sacrificed, but really is going to be creatures being killed. This gets bigger. So if I get a counter on this, I'm super happy. I've got a 4/4 for 3. Getting a couple more counters is really nice. And then if it does start to build up counters, perhaps my opponent is just like, oh God, I need to chump block this for a few turns. It gets more and more counters, and then it wipes the board except for itself. I think this is a really good card. I think it's a first pick. I think it's another card that I'm very excited to not be giving a grade to because it's a first pick. I don't know if it's an A or an A- or an A+ or whatever, but it's a first pick. Very happy to have this. It's going in every black-red or black-green deck that I have. Up next is Showdown of the Scalds. Showdown of the Scalds is 2 red-white for a rare enchantment saga. Step 1, exile the top 4 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards, which is good because you're not playing them this turn, probably. We'll talk about that in a second. Step 2 and Step 3, whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So you don't play this on turn 4. You play this on turn 5 before you play a land. You exile the top 4 cards of your library. You play a land from those top 4 because there's going to be a land in there almost guaranteed. So then you have 3 cards that next turn you can play because you've spent basically all of your mana. Unless there's a 1-drop in there, you're not casting it. And then when you do cast a spell, whether it's one of those from exiles or not, you get to put a counter on something. That's a cool little bonus. And then again, Step 3, you don't have access to those cards anymore, but if you play a spell, you get a +1/+1 counter. I think this card's okay. I don't think it's a first pick. Is it a second or a third? No. I think this is around 4th, 5th. It reminds me of every red draw spell thing that we've seen before, like Valakut Exploration. There were too many cards with Valakut as the first word. Whatever the MDFC one was, kind of. But no, not the MDFC one. I don't know which one it was. But yeah, this card is fine. Splashing green, white, go wide. This puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Not every creature you control. Just one. Just one gets a counter. Just one. And yeah, if you play a creature, the creature can't be the one that gets the counter. So I think this is like 4th, 5th. Realistically for me, it's 6th, 8th. I'm not playing this probably because it's a rare, so everybody's going to pick it and be like, oh, it's a rare, it must be good. But it's not good. It's not rare good. I'm going to go 6th, 8th and probably never see it. Up next is Svella Ice Shaper. Svella Ice Shaper is 1 green-red for a legendary snow creature troll warrior at uncommon. It's a 2/4. Pay 3, tap it, create a colorless snow artifact token named Icy Manalith. With tap, add 1 mana of any color. Pay 6 red-green, tap, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. It casts a card for free. Assuming that you pay the 8 mana. It's not free. It's not free. In fact, you are almost guaranteed overpaying for whatever this card is that you're getting for free. Now, you get to look at 4 cards. It's card selection in red-green, which is not that common. If it's turn 12 and you have 8 mana and you're not casting anything else, why wouldn't you do it? It's a nice little upside. It's a 2/4 for 3, which means it blocks pretty decently. It can help you fix your colors if perhaps you're getting a little bit greedy. It also produces snow mana. I think there's a bunch of cool things going on with this card, but I think people are going to very heavily overrate it. when does the ramp start? You play this on 3. On turn 4, you could make a mana lith, but you're not going to affect the board by doing so. I think this is around 4th, 5th. I think it does a very cool thing in fixing your mana in a 3 or 4 or 5 color deck. I think it does a cool thing in blocking decently for a very low cost. And the free thing is a nice upside if you get there. You could drop a 2-drop on 4? How could you drop a 2-drop on 4? You play this on 3. You drop a 2-drop on 4. You have 2 mana left over. This needs 3 mana to make the mana lith. You could drop a 1-drop on turn 4 and make a mana lith. You make the mana lith first and then use the mana lith. Got it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm on 4th to 5th pick for this. I think people are going to heavily overrate it at the start. I think it reads like a commander card. I'm sure this does some work in commander, but I don't think it does that kind of work in limited. So 4th, 5th for me, which means I'll probably never see it for the first month and a half. Up next is the 3 seasons. The 3 seasons. The 3 seasons is green and blue. Jaelora. Gifting a skin to Aburka you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your favorite card in the set. So green-blue for an uncommon enchantment saga. Step 1, mill 3 cards. Step 2, return up to 2 target snow permanents from your graveyard to your hand. Step 3, choose 3 cards in each graveyard. Their owners shuffle those cards into their libraries. This card's not good. It's so not good. Like green-blue, mill 3 cards, and then next turn, return up to 2 target snow permanents. So obviously returning 2 cards is nice. You're going to probably prefer to return those knowing what they are rather than just hoping 3 of those mill cards happen to be good. And then you get to shuffle 3 cards back into your library and you choose 3 that your opponent returns. Now, green-blue is the snow deck, so ideally you're going to have a bunch of snow permanents, so you're hopefully going to have 2 cards to return. But there's a lot of variance on whether this is absolute trash or good, but maybe just fine. I think realistically it's an F, and I'm never playing it. If you really want to play it, pick it up on the wheel, because you'll get it on the wheel. Let's get that Stream Raiders battle going, and then we will come on back to continue on. Let's switch to the Stream Raiders screen so you can actually see it. Yeah, it returns cards in a snow deck. That's not nothing, but you have to have them in your graveyard, right? So you have to have a certain number of snow cards in your deck to still want to play this. You know, like I don't think I'm playing this unless I have eight to 10 non-snowland snow permanents. Because like if I'm returning snowlands from my graveyard, I don't care about that. So we'll see. Kayak with most kills, Orcish Artillery with most assists, 7 gold everybody, Thangar with 2 musketeers, Brown Dandy with 3 musketeers, Rolling Rock Dave with a couple of monks, and we're going off to our second last battle before we hit a boss battle. Pop your units in every 5 minutes, and we'll get back to that in a second. Well, we take a look at the Trickster God's Heist. The Trickster God's Heist is 2 blue-black for an enchantment saga at uncommon. Step 1, you may exchange control of 2 target creatures. It's switcheroo. Step 2, you may exchange control of 2 target non-basic, non-creature permanents that share a card type. Good luck with that. Step 3, target player loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Cool. This is switcheroo for any variety of cards that have had that effect before. For 4 mana, I think switcheroo was 5, I want to say. And I never really liked switcheroo. Switcheroo was good when you, had like a bunch of shrewd negotiation is the one I'm thinking of. It was good when you were like making a lot of servos and you were like, haha, I'm going to have a bunch of garbage 1/1s and I'll take whatever their good creature is. I don't know in blue-black that you're going to have a bunch of like garbage creatures laying around to trade for good creatures. But you can trade a fine creature for a good creature or something, but that's still not amazing. Step 2, like, your opponent's going to have an enchantment out, and you give them this one? Or you give them an aura or something? I guess that's super weird. You could trade ownership of auras that are already on creatures, which means they would not change what creature they're on. You could trade equipment or trade artifacts. I don't think step 2 does anything. And then step 3 is fine. Deal 3, gain 3 is totally fine. So Trickster God's Heist is just not a card that I like to play. I was not a big fan of Switcheroo either. I think I picked this up on the wheel. Realistically, I don't think I play this card that much. It says exchange control. Can you take control of 2 creatures? You may exchange control of 2. Interesting. No. So you may exchange control of 2 target creatures. It's worded that way because in Commander, you could say you, your creature, player A, and your creature, player B, you trade. You could actually not be involved in the trade. But it's always 2 creatures switch sides. So in Limited, it's always going to be you and your opponent switch control of 2 creatures. That is very weirdly worded, and that is worded, I think, for Commander. So it's actually a very strange political card for Commander, depending on what Switcheroo even said. But yeah, I don't think I'm playing this. I think it's on the wheel. For me, it's an F, but I think you pick it up on the wheel if you really want to play it. If you find a way that you're going to have garbage cards to trade, sure. Up next is Vega the Watcher. Vega the Watcher is 1 white-black for a legendary creature, Bird Spirit, at uncommon. It's a 2/2 flyer. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, the Fertile Zone, draw a card. Oh, Switcheroo was worded that way. Exchange control of 2 target creatures, so you already could do that. But yeah, that's why it's worded that way. So it's a 2/2 flyer for 3 that whenever you foretell a card, you draw a card. That's cool. Like, it's a Windrake with an upside. I'm 4th, 5th picking this every time. If I'm, like 3rd, 4th, or 3rd, 4th pack, 2nd, 3rd pack, if I'm in a Fertile deck, this will go up to like 2nd, 3rd pick, but it's a 4th, 5th pick. It's a Windrake with an upside. It's a decent card. Up next is Waking the Trolls. Waking the Trolls is 4 red-green for an enchantment saga at rare. Step 1, destroy target land. Step 2, put target land card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You could steal that card you blew up. Step 3, choose target opponent. If they control fewer lands than you, create a number of 4/4 green troll warrior creature tokens with trample equal to the difference. I don't like this card. I think this card's bad. 6 mana land destruction is never a card I'm playing. I'm not playing 3 mana land destruction, let alone 6 mana. Grabbing that land and saying, haha, it's mine now on turn 7? I don't care. And then step 3, I make maybe a bunch of 4/4 green troll warriors. If my opponent is keeping up with me, even after I destroy that 1 land, I'm probably going to get a troll warrior, but perhaps none. And if I'm in a position where I'm getting 3 or 4 or 5 4/4s, I'm already winning that game because my opponent is so ludicrously mana screwed. This card's awful. Don't play it. It's an F. Absolute garbage. This is a rare that you open and you just drop. You just say, well, it's not my day, and you walk away. Moving on to the artifacts. We'll go through the artifacts and the lands before we wrap back around to colors. We're not on sagas anymore. Bloodline Pretender is 3 generic mana for an artifact creature shapeshifter at uncommon. It's a 2/2 changeling. As Bloodline Pretender enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever another creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodline Pretender. So it's a 3/3 for 2, which I'm not happy about, but assuming you are in a tribal deck, whether it be elves or giants or trolls or zombies or angels or whatever, this could be a 3/3 or a 4/4. Your changelings pump it up. It's fine, but it's not a high pick. I think it's like 6th through 8th pick. Maybe going up a little bit in pack 2 and pack 3 when you know you are a tribal deck. But even then, it still takes time for this to get going. And it's always going to be ever so slightly behind curve, right? Like it's going to be a 3-3 on turn 4. It's going to be a 4-4 on turn 5. It's going to be a 5-5 on turn 6. So I think it's... I think it's 6th through 8th pick because I think you might have an idea that you're heading a little bit tribal by 6th to 8th pick. But wheel is also reasonable. I could see that. Chat's kind of going for wheel at the moment. Yeah, there's not a lot of lords, but you will have a lot of the tribe. And changelings do help it out. So I'm going to go 6th through 8th pick here for Bloodline Pretender. I expect people to overrate this. Up next is Colossal Plow. Colossal Plow is 2 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at uncommon. It's a 6-3. Whenever Colossal Plow attacks, add white, 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 and you gain 3 life. Until end of turn, you don't lose mana as steps and phases end. Crew 6. This card's awful. It's an F. Yes, there's an Ox that we'll talk about that crews this all by its lonesome, but crew 6 is stupid. Getting white, white, white is dumb. 3 life, who cares? It's a bad card. It's an F. Don't pick it. Don't play it. Why is it a vehicle? Yeah. Up next is Cosmos Elixir. Cosmos Elixir is 4 generic mana for an artifact at rare. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total. Otherwise, you gain 2 life. No. 4 mana. At least it doesn't do nothing because it's your end step. So 4 mana, probably gain 2 life. And then as long as your opponent is never touching your life total, which means you're doing pretty well, presumably, you're going to get a one-sided Howling Mine. I'm sure there's decks where this is going to work. I want to say that this is an F, just to be like, don't play it. Realistically, it's a wheel, and like 1 out of 20 drafts, you're going to have the deck where you want to play this card. Because you're going to gain life, and then you're going to get a one-sided Howling Mine. So, F, wink, wink, pick it up that 1 out of 20 times where it's good. Up next is Funeral Longboat. Funeral Longboat is 2 generic mana for an artifact vehicle at common. It's a 3-3 with Vigilance Crew 1. It's a vehicle, so it's bad. This almost gets back to the not broken OK Kaladesh vehicles. Crew 1 is where vehicles start to become playable. Now, this reminds me of Sky Skiff from Kaladesh, which was a 2-3 flyer. Crew 1, and it was totally playable. This doesn't have that evasion of flying, but is still pretty dang playable. It attacks on turn 3 most likely because you're going to be able to crew it if you want. It blocks really well because you could crew it to block, or you could crew it to attack. It's got vigilance, so you could crew it to block, assuming you have the creatures to do all of this. I think this is a totally fine card. It's not great. It's not amazing. I think it's still 6th to 8th pick. But I think this card is pretty decent and maybe unassuming enough that people are going to underrate it to begin with. It's totally okay. It's totally okay. 6th through 8th pick for Funeral Longboat. Up next is Goldvein Pick. Goldvein Pick. Why isn't it a pickaxe? I guess it's just a pick. There's no axe to it. 2 generic mana for an artifact equipment at common. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Equip for 1. This is as cheap as an equipment can be, and I still don't want to play it because this takes up a card slot in my deck. Those are valuable things. Don't waste them on this. +1/+1 is pretty dang weak, which is not going to help my creature get in order to get that treasure token. It's an F. I'm not playing this card. And it's a bad start for us looking at equipment for the equipment decks. F for Goldvein Pick. Up next is Maskwood Nexus. Maskwood Nexus is 4 generic mana for an artifact at rare. Creatures you control are every creature type. So all creatures have changeling, sort of. They don't get that exact rule, though. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Pay 3, tap, make a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with changeling. This one does have changeling. So No, I don't like this. So it's a four mana. It's a 4 mana make your deck tribal. This makes your deck tribal because every creature is every tribe. And then 3 mana to pump out 2/2s on the ground. Well, this certainly is not Whirler Maker because they're not flyers. I don't think this is good because it's a 4 mana do nothing. And then it pumps out a 2/2 every turn that you have 3 mana to spare. That probably depends a little bit on the speed of the format. In a fast format, this is definitely unplayable. In a very, very glacially slow format, maybe this is pretty playable. So I think we have to wait and see on this one. It is not a card that I start out playing. So I start out wheeling this and putting it in a deck where it might work really well, which means as a rare, I'm just never going to see it. So I'm starting out on the wheel, and we'll see where it ends up. Up next is Pyre of Heroes. Pyre of Heroes is 2 generic mana for an artifact at rare. Pay 2, tap, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card that shares a creature type with the sacrificed creature and has converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. It's Birthing Pod, except it has to share a creature type. Birthing Pod was amazing, so amazing that it was banned in Modern. It's not a good limited card. It's very difficult to build a Birthing Pod chain. Maybe you played with Vannifar a couple of years ago. Vannifar wasn't that great. As Jay Alora said, you're never getting this to work in draft the right way. If you play this, it's an F. Don't play it. If you play it, screenshot your deck so that you know what's left in your deck. You have to do that. But F for Pyre of Heroes. Up next is Raider's Carve. Raider's Carve is 3 generic mana for a 4/4 artifact vehicle at common. When Raider's Carve attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. True 3. 3 is tough. 3 is not 1. It is a 4/4, so you do upgrade your 3/3 or your 3/2 or your 3 whatever into a 4/4. And perhaps it ramps you on turn 4 or 5 or 6 or later, which is not that exciting. This card's just not that great. I think it's exceedingly filler, and I don't even really want to play it. I think this is a bad vehicle in comparison to the Funeral Pyre, which is a good vehicle. You could upgrade your Giant Ox into a 4/4. That's true. So I'm putting this at for me, it's an F. I'm not playing it, but it's a wheel, and you can fit it into your deck as a 23rd card if you're desperate. But you just don't. 23rd cards don't exist these days in Limited. All cards are good enough generally that you don't have to put the few bad cards that exist into your deck. Yeah, there's no evasion or anything. So F for me for Raider's Carve. Up next is Raven Wings. Raven Wings is 2 generic mana for an artifact equipment at common. Equipped creature gets +1/+0, has flying, and is a bird in addition to its other types. Equipped for 2 generic mana. I like this way less than I like Cliff Haven Kite Sail because that auto-equipped and only cost 1, but it was 2 to equip, I believe. There is a place for these. The big stompy decks, it gives them a little bit of reach to throw this on your 6/6 or whatever that didn't have evasion, and now suddenly it's a flyer and a 7/6. But there are decks where you're going to want to play this, and they're going to be mildly few and far between. So this is on the wheel and pretty close to an F, because there's only some decks that are going to want this. And yeah, second piece of equipment, not looking good. Up next is Replicating Ring. Replicating Ring is 3 generic mana for a snow artifact at uncommon. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. That would be snow mana, of course. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a night counter on Replicating Ring. Then, if it has 8 or more night counters on it, remove all of them and create 8 colorless snow artifact tokens named Replicated Ring with tap, add 1 mana of any color. So on turn 11, oh boy, are you going to have mana. You just watch out for turn 11. This is a Manolith, and it's a snowman. It's an icy Manolith at that. So if you are splashing, if you are playing 3 colors, if you are playing 4 colors or 5 colors, this is around a 6th to 8th pick, perhaps even a wheel. But Manolith is just not a color that, or not a card that you're looking to put into a regular 2-color deck. You just don't play it. Perhaps if you're specifically green-blue, and maybe you didn't quite get enough snowlands, you can pop this in as some extra snow mana. But realistically, this is 6th through 8th. I think realistically this is the wheel. It only goes in certain decks. And yeah, that's about it. It's on the wheel, and if you are splashing going 3, 4, 5 colors or desperate for snow mana, here you go. Otherwise, don't play this card. It's a Manolith that doesn't do anything. Up next is Runed Crown. Runed Crown is 3 generic mana for an artifact equipment at uncommon. When Runed Crown enters the battlefield, you may search your library, hand, and or graveyard for a rune card and put it onto the battlefield attached to Runed Crown. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Equip for 2. The rune cards we'll look at, there's 1 in each color. They are enchantments that are auras that go on creatures and give them an ability, sometimes a power and or toughness boost. And you can also put them on a piece of equipment, and the equipment gains whatever the aura would have given. So for example, the white one gives lifelink. If we put the white one on this crown gives +1/+1 and lifelink. The runes are not great. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but they are not great. This card just looks bad to me. I don't think I want to be doing the rune stuff. There's a couple that I'll play because they're fine enough, but this card is bad. I'm not playing this. It's an F. Absolutely not. So there we go. 3 equipment deep. Up next is Scorned Effigy. Scorned Effigy is 3 generic mana. Thanks for that follow, Jackals. Artifact creature Scarecrow at common. It's a 2/3 with Foretell 0. So here's our first Foretell card. So we can pay 2 generic mana to put this face down. On a future turn, so you can't do it the same turn that you foretell it, which is totally fine in online games where it will keep track of it all for you. In paper, I think this is, in addition to several other things throughout the years, piling up to be a little bit too much to keep track of. So on a future turn, you can pay 0 to cast this card. This card's bad. This card's very bad. I'm not playing a 3 mana 2/3. Maybe if I was desperate for a card, I would play a 2 mana 3/3, which is what this is if you foretell it. But of course, it's a 2 mana 3/3 that's not coming down until at least turn 3. I think this card's just never going to have a spot. I think realistically it's an F, just because, like I said, limited these days, the cards are good enough that you don't have to play the very few bad cards that exist. You don't have to. So I think this is just an F. If you're desperate, you can get this on the wheel. If you're pack 3 and you've got like 21 playables, you can get this last pick. Maybe you're desperate for another Foretell card in your blue-white Foretell deck. You can find better cards. I guess as well, yeah, you could put it in your black-white second spell deck. Play better cards. Play better cards. Yeah, we've just started with gold artifacts and lands. So we actually haven't done the colors yet, but I have briefly mentioned the black-white deck and how I don't think it's that great. Up next is Weathered Runestone. Weathered Runestone is 2 generic mana for an artifact and uncommon. Non-land permanent cards in graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from graveyards or libraries. This is a constructed card mostly. It's a sideboard card kind of explicitly against the blue-black deck, but it's incredibly narrow. You should never be wasting a real pick on this. It's realistically an F, because you just shouldn't be picking it. If you find yourself up against blue-black and you last picked this at some point, maybe it comes in, but even then, probably not. So F for Weathered Runestone. All right, that brings us up to the lands, which is going to get us pretty close to our first break. Feichel, thank you very much for the 23-month resub. So up first, we have the dual lands. These appear in the basic land slot sometimes. I don't know if we've seen how often. If it's like the core sets, I think it's a weird ratio. I think it's like 5 out of 12 times or something. You'll get one of these snow lands, which is a tapped dual land with land types. So Alpine Meadow, for example, taps for red or white, and it would also tap for snow because your snow land makes snow. It's also a mountain plains, which means it's fetchable. If you have that ability, there's a few cards we already saw. Go and find a forest, for example. These are cards that you're going to play in every single 2-color deck where you're these 2 colors. You're going to use them to splash. Maybe you even throw them in your blue-green deck because you're desperate for snow mana. But these are cards that you're picking 6th through 8th, basically, or being happy to see on the wheel. But you're not picking these super duper highly. And yeah, you know dual lands. We've talked about dual lands a bajillion sets in a row. Arctic Treeline, same thing. Guard Armory is a land at uncommon. Guard Armory enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add a white. Pay 1 red, red, white. Tap, sack it. Search your library for an aura card and or an equipment card. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Well, so far we've seen garbage equipment, and we've briefly mentioned some not great auras. So I don't think I want to play this card. The upside is if I am red, white, this is a tapped plains that maybe if I am playing any of the runes or any other auras or an equipment late in the game, there's an upside. So I don't think it's an F exactly, but I think you should be able to get this on the wheel. I don't think it's very good. Bark Channel Pathway is up next. These are the pathways. They are not back in this set. We just have the ones that we didn't have before. Can you search for gods with equipment on the back? No? Yeah. In all zones, they are the types on their faces, except in that weird situation where you can play a land from your graveyard, in which case they are their back faces. But no, you could not go fetch the god. So the pathways, we get the 4 that we didn't have. So they are, we know these, we saw them in Zendikar Rising. You can play them as this one, you can play it as a green mana source or a blue mana source, your choice. Again, like the dual lands, if you are in these colors, cool, but they're a very low pick. Grab them on the wheel. Bright Step Pathway. Brettagar Stronghold is the next uncommon land. It enters the battlefield tapped. It's a 4, or it taps for a green. You can pay green, white, white to tap it and sack it to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. They gain vigilance and lifelink until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. I like this one way better than I like the red, white one, because at some point in the game, I'm probably going to love to pay green, white, white, throw away a land for good, and get a couple of counters in lifelink vigilance. You know, it could just be a really nice little turn. There's a nice little upside. I don't think it's an amazing card. I don't think it's a high pick. I think it's 6th through 8th at best. But yeah, I think it's significantly better than the red, white one. And this, I think, is actually one of the better ones. Some of these cards are not great. But yeah, 6th through 8th for Brettagar Stronghold. We've got another pathway here. Faceless Haven is a snowland at rare. Tap to add a colorless. That would be a snow colorless, of course. Pay snow. Faceless Haven becomes a 4/3 creature with vigilance, and all creature types until end of turn, it's still a land. It's a Crawling Barrens, kind of not quite as good as Crawling Barrens. But yeah, it's a man land that you're probably going to look to play in your blue-green deck, but maybe you happen to have enough snow mana sources in some other deck to play it. But you need to make sure you have those snow mana sources. You are not playing this card if you don't have a bunch of snow mana sources. And 3 snow mana sources is not enough, because you would have to draw all 3 of those plus this one, or else. You need to be in a pretty heavily snow deck, which is why I think realistically this is a blue-green card. But if you are in blue-green snow and you have a whole bunch of snow, having a 4/3 Vigilant Manland is pretty decent. So I think this is like a... I think it's a wheel in pack 1. Once you know you're in blue-green snow, and I think you have already picked up some snow basics, then I think you pick this up significantly highly. But we start on the wheel in pack 1, and it goes in a specific deck. Up next is Gates of Istval. Gates of Istval is a landed uncommon. It enters tapped. You can tap it to add 1 white mana. Pay 2 white, blue, blue. Tap it, sack it. You gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. That's a lot of mana because, of course, you do have to tap and sack this one as well. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 6 mana to do that, but end of the game, you got the mana kicking around. Why not gain 2 life and draw 2 cards? Again, I think this is around 6th through 8th. I don't think you spend a very high pick on it, but I would happily play this one. Maybe in multiple. Actually, yeah, definitely in multiples. I would play this one in every blue-white deck. How do you do the click the thingy? If you are on desktop, click the screen. If you're on mobile, I don't think you can. Glacial Floodplain is another dual. Not Vold Slumbermound is a uncommon land. Not Vold Slumbermound enters the battlefield tapped. Add a red. Pay 3 red, green, green. Tap it, sack it. Slumber Mold, or sacrifice it. Destroy target land. Create a 4/4 green troll warrior creature token with trample. Significantly worse than the blue-white one. Again, if you are very late in the game, maybe you just pay 7 mana, 6 mana plus this one to make a 4/4. Why not? Like, it's a nice little mana sink if you get there, but I'm never counting on this happening. I'm never super excited about this happening, but it's a fine 6th through 8th pick, or maybe even on the wheel. I would never not play it in a red-green deck, but it's not amazing. So 6th through 8th pick at best for Not Vold Slumberbound. Marbles may or may not happen today. We will see. Great Hall of Starnheim. Great Hall of Starnheim is a landed uncommon. Great Hall of Starnheim enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add a black. Pay white, white, black. Tap it, sack Great Hall of Starnheim and a creature you control. Make a 4/4 white angel warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. So unfortunately it does not stay... or does not save creatures, because you do have to do this at sorcery speed. But hey, look, it's another 3 mana Serra Angel, but you do obviously have to have the creature to sack. But again, this one's totally fine because you'll play it as a tapped swamp, and at some point 4 mana, right? Because you have to tap this one as well. And then at some point, a Serra Angel sounds really good, and one of these creatures sucks. And you pay 4 mana, you sack this, you kill that creature, and hey, you got a Serra Angel. So I think this is another 6th or 8th pick. I would play it in every black-white deck, and I think it's fine. Why is black-white archetype play a second spell? Why is it not black-white Serra Angels? It basically sounds like it's black-white Serra Angels. Hengegate Pathway is another pathway. Highland Forest is a dual. Ice Tunnel is a dual. Emmerstrum Skullcairn is an uncommon land that enters the battlefield tapped. You tap it, add a black. Pay 1 black, red, red, tap it, sack it. Deals 3 damage to target player. That player discards card. Activate this ability only anytime he casts a sorcery. Sorcery speed hurts it a little bit, but if this is in your deck, your opponent starts the game at 17 life. That's pretty okay. That's pretty dang okay. I'm playing every single one of these in every black-red deck that I'm in. 6th through 8th pick, it's still not a high one, but 3 damage to the face whenever I happen to have a moment for it is pretty okay. And it's not costing me a card slot is the important thing here, of course. We'll get to that battle in a second, just because we're pretty close to being finished this first section of the review. Litiara Mirror Lake is a landed uncommon. It enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add a blue, pay 2 green, green, blue, tap it, sack it, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Activate it anytime you could activate, or you could cast a sorcery. So again, I don't like clones that only clone your own things, but this one doesn't cost you anything to play. You play it as a tapped island, and then if at some point it is useful to do so, you can copy something. And if you don't, it's still a tapped island. So again, like most of them, I guess except for the red-white one, which sucks, it's a 6th to 8th pick. If it's relevant, it's going to be good. And if it's not relevant, it's fine. It's an island. Up next is Port of Carfell. Port of Carfell is a landed uncommon, enters the battlefield tapped, tap to add a blue, pay 3 blue, black, black, tap it, sack Port of Carfell, mill 4 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Yeah, again, it's fine if you are late game, and hopefully not too close to milling yourself out, although you shouldn't be generally. There's not exactly a true mill deck in this format, I don't believe. You could just reanimate something for a ludicrous amount of mana, but again, like the clone, it's a tapped island. The downside of putting this card in your deck is quite low. Whether or not it's ever relevant, you don't really know, but when it is, it's going to be good. So again, 6th through 8th pick. I'd happily put it in every blue-black deck, and when it's relevant, cool. Westru, no, we started at gold artifact lands. You have not missed anything except for those. We still have white, blue, black, red, and green to do. Rimewood Falls is a dual land. Shimmer Drift Vale is a snow land common. Shimmer Drift Vale enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters the battlefield, choose a color. Tap, add 1 mana of the chosen color. It's a snow land, so it would be a snow of that color. This is Evolving Wilds, basically. It doesn't thin your deck, which doesn't matter. It doesn't make it land into the battlefield, which doesn't matter. It does exactly the same thing that Evolving Wilds does, which means that in a 2-color deck, you're probably not going to want it unless you're looking for snowlands, in which case you do. And if you are splashing or in a 3-color deck or a 4-color deck or a 5-color deck, you're going to love it, which puts it for me around the 6th to 8th pick. It goes higher if you are in one of those decks. Yes, this would be a common, not in the land slot. The land slot is basic snowlands, except sometimes are the basic, not basic, sorry, but the dual snowlands with land types. Up next is Skemfar Elderhall. Skemfar Elderhall is an uncommon land, enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add a green, pay 2 black, black, green, tap it, sack it. Up to 1 target creature you don't control gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Create 2 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. Activate this ability only anytime you cast a sorcery. I'm not as high on this one, just because, like, super late game, yeah, I'd love a 4/4. Super late game, yeah, I'd love to clone something. Super late game, yeah, I'd love to reanimate something. Super late game, do I want to give something -2/-2 and have 2 1/1s? Not really. Again, there's next to no downside to putting this in your deck, but I do think this one slips a little bit to the wheel side rather than being 6th through 8th pick. Snowfield Sinkhole is a dual. Sulphurous Mire is a dual. Surtland Frostpire. There's 10 of these uncommon lands. I feel like there's going to be so many packs that are just like 3 lands in the pack. Surtland Frostpire is a landed uncommon. Enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add a red. Pay 2 blue, blue, red. Tap, sack it. Scry 2. Deals 2 to each creature. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. I think this one's kind of similar to the last one. Again, I don't know that I'm looking to do this late game. There will be times where it'll be a little bit handy, maybe, but I'm not super looking to do this late game. Again, the ceiling or the floor of playing this is pretty low, but I think this one's a little bit more on the wheel side than it is on the 6th through 8th side. It does have very, very nice art. Tyrate Sanctum is up next. It's a rare land. Tap to add a colorless, not a snow colorless, unfortunately. Pay 2 tap. Target legendary creature becomes a god in addition to its other types. Put a +1/+1 counter on it. Pay 4, tap it, sack it. Put an indestructible counter on target god. This card's bad. This card's a straight up F. You would need a legendary creature, so that's going to be a specific rare, a specific mythic, or maybe one of those uncommons. And in doing so, or sorry, legendary creature would be the uncommons and some of the rares. You get to put a counter on it. Cool, I guess. And then you could pay 4 more mana to put an indestructible counter on it. Or you could pay 4 mana to make one of your regular gods indestructible. Can you target the same creature repeatedly? Yeah. So you could just continuously pay 2 to put a counter on a legendary creature. But again, that's going to be like 2 cards in your deck? Like, how many legendaries do you really think you're going to have? There's the 10 uncommons, and then we're really looking at rares. There are a lot of legends, but they're rares, right? In fact, I have Scryfall open for this very reason. Set Kaldheim in booster, type legendary, rarity less than rare. There are 12 uncommon legends spread across all of the colors. All of the colors. Is making Changeling indestructible not worth it? I guess it would make Changelings indestructible. And there is also no guaranteed legend like in Dominaria, that's true. Dominaria also just had way more legends, I think. At uncommon anyways. Because they had monocolor, they had like monocolored of every color, and they had dual colored uncommons of every color. I think this card's an F. I will look to be wrong, but I think this card's an F. Again, if we're talking about like you happen to be in a Changeling deck, then this card's good. That doesn't really matter because the card's still exceptionally bad for most sets. The Changeling point is interesting, but again, you're not picking this to get into Changeling. You're not picking this when you have like 3 or 4 Changelings. You're picking this like towards the end of the pack 3, when you have discovered that you are in the Changeling deck. Also, there are 7 Changelings below rare. There's not that many. There are 4 common Changelings and 3 uncommons. Perhaps be careful thinking that Changeling is going to be a super giant thing. Anyways, F for me. I'll keep my eye on it. What's going on here? There we go. Volatile Fjord is a dual. Woodland Chasm is a dual. The World Tree is a land at rare. The World Tree enters the battlefield tapped. Tap to add a green. As long as you control 6 or more lands you control have, tap, add 1 mana of any color. Pay white, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, tap, sacrifice the World Tree. So that is 11 mana. Search your library for any number of God cards. Which is what, like 1? Maybe 2. Put them onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. It's an F. This is not working in limited. You are not doing this in limited. Don't. It's a super duper ultra F in limited. And then we have these snow-covered basics. So these are going to be in the basic slot when you don't get a duel. So you are going to need to pick these higher than you would pick a basic land, which is last pick, of course. So if you are finding, or if you are wanting to have snow mana, you're going to need to pick these cards up. You do not have them in the sideboard. They are probably around 6th to 8th picks. Of course, it's going to depend on the deck that you're in. Maybe you're just in like red, white, hit them, and you don't really care about snowman, in which case these are garbage. But you know, you're going to know when you want these, and they're going to be around 6th to 8th pick. But be aware you are going to need to pick them. Don't just think you're going to get these on the wheel. Don't just think you're going to get these last pick. Pick them highly if you need them. All right, YouTube, thank you very much for watching the first video of these cards. The white, blue, black, red, and green videos will be following. But yeah, like, share, subscribe. I know these set reviews don't do quite as well as they used to, but if you would like, share, subscribe, that would be awesome. And I'll see y'all for the next video.